Thank you for your patience. My name is Jamie Hobor. I'm with Hampton Roads Sanitation District. I'm one of our CMMS analysts and system administrator for the program. Our asset management division is within our engineering department. Let's see here. Here we go. Just a little bit of intro about who we are, who HRSD is. So for those of you that attended my session last year, this will be a little bit of a repeat for you, at least for the intro. So we serve 20 cities and counties in southeastern Virginia and the Eastern Shore, and so about 5,000 square miles with a population of just under 2 million. So just in case you weren't familiar with Virginia. So we are a political subdivision of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and we are governed by the commissioners that are appointed by the governor. And our collection system is made up of about 500 miles of pipes, ranging in diameter from 6 to 60 inches. We have a little over 100 pump stations throughout our service area. We have 8 major treatment plants, 8 smaller treatment plants, including one on the Eastern Shore of Virginia, with a combined capacity of 225 million gallons per day. So we recently redid our strategic plan, so for the next few years, but one of our principles of our strategic plan is data-driven. So it's very much in line with EAM. So we gather data in areas of our business and use it to support decision-making. Leveraging data increases our efficiency and helps us to be good stewards of our resources. So I showed them yesterday during the workshop, but I have a sticker on the back of my Surface Pro that says we are all asset managers. And we are all asset managers, right? From the bottom to the top in our organizations. So our trades, we need to make sure that we give them the tools to do their job, and we need to let them tell their story, right? So when I'm conducting a training session for EAM, but also we have EAM in our apprenticeship program. It's called Fundamentals of Asset Management. And one of the first things I say to them, or I ask them, is, are you an asset manager? And they may not hold that title. They may not hold manager in their title. They may not hold leader in their title, but they are just as much an asset manager as their counterpart is. And we want them to tell the story. What is wrong with that piece of equipment so that we can make those decisions for replacement? Supervisors and managers, they need data at the tip of their fingers, right? They want to be able to make those decisions. Senior management is data-driven and risk-based decision-making. So we believe at HRSD that every employee plays a vital role in the maintenance of our assets. So together, we efficiently maintain, rehabilitate, and replace assets to minimize risk and stretch funds by effectively utilizing asset management tools and procedures. So we obviously needed senior leadership and even middle management. We needed their buy-in. And many of you heard my story last year about our inventory example. So I'll just give you a couple other examples of where you need that buy-in. We've got hurricanes that we have to deal with. We have severe storms, just like our named winter storm that we just had last week. We got a foot of snow, or in our service area, it ranged a little bit. So we've got ride-out crews, and depending on, I don't think there's probably any damage that's going to amount to a FEMA claim, at least for the winter storm that I'm aware of. But I do know for hurricanes, that is definitely a possibility and something we've had to combat in the past. So having all that documentation in EAM allows for us to submit FEMA claims for any named event, litigation claims, and just for our staff to be able to justify replacement or additional large pieces of equipment. We, a couple years back, had a couple work centers requesting a VAC-on, which is upwards of $200,000, and they couldn't support it with documentation to purchase that second one because they weren't properly utilizing the tools usage tab in EAM. So prior to going live with EAM, we had a series of workshops. So we're bringing in everybody from all the different work centers. So getting that buy-in at the low level, we needed it at the senior level, right? We still to this day have ongoing monthly meetings. We now have at each of our locations, mini admins, if you will. Their job title officially is maintenance planner, but they have the ability to add new assets into the system, provide some smaller training with the guys or gals at the treatment plants, and then they can write procedures, set up PM schedules, add inventory to the system, whereas previously it was landing on mine and a coworker's shoulders, and as you can imagine, that would be a lot for our service area. We also discuss with our maintenance planner anytime we are making any changes to the system. So we at Asset Management, we don't want to just blanketly make a decision to make a change within the system without reviewing it with our maintenance planners, who are then, they're our liaison to each of our work centers. So we discuss it with them, and then they bring that back to their work centers, discuss it with their work centers, bring questions back to us, bring issues back to us. That way we can either make a change in the system, or maybe it's a software improvement request we need to submit to Hexagon, but we have that relationship and we meet with them on a monthly basis. This is our overview of our system of systems, if you will, for our asset management program. As you can see, Hexagon EAM is in the middle. There's a lot of other programs feeding into EAM, and then we are ultimately feeding out to Power BI. Where our visuals are. And unfortunately, I'm not able to show you a demo. But you'll have to just bear with me on that one. But I'll kind of talk through it as best I can. So Oracle ERP, so we are interfacing in all of our labor and financials. Financials in terms of anything related to a work order or anything related to parts. So quantity and price of parts. Consultant costs on a work order all get synced over from our EBS system. From GIS, we're syncing over pipe data and spatial analysis data. From Fleetistics and DCS, we are syncing runtime data for PM planning. Good example for Fleetistics, we're all familiar, we all drive a vehicle, right? But one of our vehicles is our VAC-on truck. And that one is not just a vehicle to get from point A to point B. It's also a tool. So with Fleetistics, right, we can monitor our mileage on our vehicle, right? That's our speedometer. But we also need runtime hours, right? Because that vehicle, while parked, the engine's still running. So most likely, right, we're going to be doing oil changes more frequently than the speedometer is going to indicate. So having that runtime hours synced from Fleetistics to EAM will help us with PM planning. Vibration analysis data from our Asset Watch for corrective maintenance, and CIP asset data with our unifier system. So we've got some interfaces to pull over work order data when they create their requisitions so that we can then pull the costs back into EAM. We have over 76,000 assets in our system, and our spare parts inventory, we have over 23,000 line items with a value of over $26 million in stock. We're using EAM for work order management, inventory management, obviously asset management, people, life cycle, O&M, cost, staffing decisions. So I'm going to focus a little bit more on just our line breaks. So we've got, line break for us is anytime a force main failure or gravity failure, right? We don't want to have any spillage, right? We don't want our customers having to deal with sewage in the streets, right? So unfortunately, we do have line breaks and we do have to fix them. So we do have a document, one of our principles. We do collect data. We perform forensic analysis to determine the cause of the failure, the line break. And this information is used to update failure trends, costs, our risk model, and ultimately helps us better understand our risk associated with force main failures and where we need to focus attention on mitigation and replacement. And I just went ahead this morning and added a picture of one of our recent breaks. So what documents do you have to help ensure necessary data collection? Anybody? Nobody wants to volunteer? All right. At HRSD, we have several documents to help ensure the necessary data is collected in a standardized and consistent format. So one of those documents is the force main failure data collection and forensic analysis guidelines. And let's see. Another one of our documents is our CMMS SOP, our inventory guidelines, our training manuals, all of our data standards. So we want, when individual is adding a new part to the system, we want that to be in a standardized format: noun, modifier, attribute 1, attribute 2. It's going to help with filtering. It's going to help with searching. We have a standard list of abbreviations so that we're all consistent. If you ever attend any one of my meetings, I'm always harping standardization and consistency. Otherwise, we're just going to end up with a ton of duplicates in the system. So we're trying to mitigate the number of duplicates in the system. And then, of course, our force main failure data collection and forensic analysis guidelines that I'm going to talk about a little bit more. This document outlines how to, our background, purpose, and staffing responsibilities. So as outlined in the force main failure data collection and forensic analysis guidelines, the system manager is responsible to ensure that our CMMS work order has been entered, has been QA/QC'd, and the data is collected. That individual is going to verify all labor has been booked by our staff, so repair crews, oversight, water quality testing, verifying that written to the correct piece of equipment, that all the parts are booked. Professional and third-party services has been added, so we're going to see that on the additional cost tab. All comments are entered. What was the issue and what was done for the repair? Line break data collections checklist is also completed. And then lastly, we track on a GIS layer for trending analysis. So this here is Appendix B of the document that I've been referencing. This is our line break data collection and has been turned into a checklist within EAM. So it is applied to all CMMS work orders with a subclass of line break, and it is required to be completed before closing out the work order. So one of the mistakes that I made when I first started setting up checklists was I didn't really pay too much attention to the required by checkbox. So we like to make sure that our checklist, we marked required or mark warning. At the very least, we want to warn the individual that they're about to close a work order and they haven't completed the checklist. If we want to ensure that the checklist is completed, mark each checklist item as required. It's going to force them to complete the checklist before the work order is able to be completed. So the purpose is to ensure the failure event is captured appropriately in CMMS and that all the data is collected and repair methods are documented to the extent possible. So then we do force main desktop research. I'm not the one that does it. We have a good team. So staff does research records to determine force main attributes and potential impacts and force main failure history. And then the following are researched and documented. Force main attributes, so pipe types and class, pipe layers, costing and cathodic protection, pipe size, pipe thickness, and then the history, the break history, the cause and location of previous failures, and then the repair records, the location and dates of those failures. So as an admin, what tools do you have available to make the system more successful? So how would you require the data in EAM? Any ideas? Required fields? What was that? Mm-hmm. Flex, yep. That's okay. We're going to go over that. So leadership and support and accountability, that's going to be one of them, right? So if we go back to my example last year with inventory, I'll try to give a really high level what happened there. About 60% of our parts didn't have cost. That was a problem, right? So coming down from the top down to our field staff, they had 6 months to have a cost for every part in our storeroom. because our inventory is now on our financial statements, and we are now externally audited, whereas before we were not. So having leadership support and accountability is important to help require that data. Screen Designer is another place to mark fields required, and I'll explain to you why some of the other options are going to help with Screen Designer. Because at first glance, Screen Designer, oh yeah, let's make that field required. But what if you don't need that field required for all work order types? Screen Designer may not work for you in that case, right? Flex business rules, Extensible Framework. Be careful with Extensible Framework. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't write that SQL code. We have a team that gets to write those, because if we write this one wrong, we can make some problems within your system. So reach out to your partners, your consultants, reach out to Hexagon for assistance with Extensible Framework or even Flex business rules. But utilizing those will help you to, like in our case, we want the, which field is it? We have the failure code and action code. Or a failure code is not required on our preventive maintenance work orders, right? Because they're not failures, right? We're just doing PM. But we want that failure code to be required. So Screen Designer is not going to work in that case. But that's where your Flex business rules or your Extensible Framework is going to come into play to make that field required for just the work order types that you want. We had an issue with canceling of PMs. Great, fine. The work order gets canceled. We didn't get to it for whatever reason. We've gotten to a point now that we want to know why we're canceling those PMs. Is it a staffing issue? Could we not take the piece of equipment out of service because it's in use at the moment? So we have a whole list, but we don't need that field filled out for every work order type. That's where your Flex business rules or your Extensible Framework is going to come into play as well to make that field required on the screen. QC and follow-up by our analysts. So we have condition assessment analysts that do QA, QC, our force main repair work orders, ensuring that all the data has been collected. Oftentimes our repairs for force mains are upwards of 6 figures, and we want to make sure that cost is being captured in the system. So just to show you, I've got some screenshots. Unfortunately, I'm not able to do my demo. It's just technology just wasn't on my side today. But I've highlighted a lot of fields that are required, and they're required at different points in the system. So while this work order is in the open status, some of these fields aren't required yet. So you might notice I've highlighted failure code, suggested failure code, and action code. They're highlighted as required, but they don't have a red asterisk, because they're not going to get required until we go to complete that work order. If a user is writing a work order and there's not an applicable failure code, we've got a user-defined field for suggested failure code. So they can enter in a suggested failure code, and then the system won't require the failure code field to be filled out. That allows us in asset management to evaluate those work orders to determine, do we need to add a new failure code? Or maybe they have the work order written to the incorrect piece of equipment. Or maybe they have the work order identified with the wrong work order type. So it allows us to have those additional conversations to make sure that we're getting the correct data documented. The standard work order field is also on this screen. You can see that it's marked required. Standard work order field is not required on very many work orders at all in our system. But it is required for our line breaks, because that's going to drive the checklist and ensuring that the checklist tab gets populated. So utilizing the standard work order, when I train them for creating work orders for line breaks specifically, I want them to fill out that standard work order field first, because that standard work order field is going to populate some of the other fields for them. It's going to populate all the trades on the activities tab, and one of those trades has the task plan that has the appropriate checklist associated to it, because we want to make sure that gets captured. It also fills out some of the other fields on this work order, such as the work order class and subclass. It also sets the priority for our line breaks to be emergencies. So just to kind of go through some screenshots with you, additional cost tab here. Why is this important? If a contractor strikes our line, guess who we're billing? We're billing the contractor. Or we need this cost data so that we can file a FEMA claim. or a litigation or insurance claim. So it's important that we get this documentation added to the system. This here is a summary of an emergency repair on a 30-inch PCCP force main due to a contractor strike. The tools usage tab, as you can see, we've got a lot of tools that were used. And when we talk about tools, I always stress in training, tools is not your hammer, it's not your drill. These are major pieces of equipment that are in our system, both an asset and a tool. Because we're performing maintenance on that piece of equipment, but we're also using it as a tool. And the rates that we use are FEMA rates. So every 2 years, FEMA updates their rates. And those are the rates that we use in our system, is based off FEMA. And then here is the cost summary tab on the work order. Again, we need to be able to potentially bill a contractor, FEMA, or insurance claims. And then this is just a summary of an emergency 30-inch PCCP force main, again, due to a contractor strike. And the labor here on this work order by our staff was 778 hours of manpower. Screen designer, just to give you an idea here, this icon is only going to be available by those with the permissions. So it's set on the user setup screen. It's just a checkbox. Most likely, it's probably going to be your sysadmin, your system admin. So if you don't have that up in the icon, up in your toolbar, the permission hasn't been set for you. When you come into the screen, you have the ability to make fields required, read only, hidden. You can set drop downs, set lookups. You can move fields around if you need to as well. Flex business rules. So we have 20 active flex business rules against our R5 events table. I just wanted to give you a couple of examples of how you could use that. So for the standard work order that is required for line breaks, this is required both post-update. We have a post-update and a post-insert. Comments are required for all non-PM work orders, right? We couldn't just make comments required. So Flex Business Rule requires that. This is where your QA/QC from your supervisors comes in play before they close a work order, right? We can't, unfortunately, Flex and Extensibility Framework can't force good quality comments, right? And honestly, all they need to put is a period on that work order, and it's going to satisfy that requirement. But that's where the person that's closing that work order needs to do their part as well. We also require that labor is booked to all of our work orders. Once again, one line item on the book labor tab would be enough to satisfy that requirement. So again, the person closing that work order is going to be verifying that all the hours have been added. Another Flex Business Rule we have is our warranty expiration date. So if a piece of equipment is under warranty, we've got the warranty expiration date being populated in a user-defined field on the work order screen. So they can see that it is or is not under warranty. As we know, sometimes repair work that we do could potentially void a warranty. So we want to make sure that before any work is done, is it under warranty? The completed by field is populated when the status is changed to completed. That's one of our Flex Business Rules again. And then our state inspection expiration date for our fleet. This field is populated for any vehicles, work orders for vehicles. It'll pull in the current expiration date. And then when the user enters in the new expiration date, it updates the asset record as well. So just a few examples for you. And then Extensible Framework. These are custom JavaScript files. You can only have, at least last I checked, one active EF per screen. So we currently have 4. We have Extensible Framework on our asset screen, work request screen, work order, and and we also have a custom work order screen as well. So that's where we have our EFs. One of our EFs is a pop-up. So it's a pop-up message when the user is creating a work order. When that user selects any work order type, they get a pop-up message of the definition of that work order type. It gives them the opportunity to verify, is this a corrective maintenance work order, or should this be a project work order, for an example. And then the failure and action codes are required for corrective maintenance work orders only. So as you can see, that's why we couldn't make those fields required using Screen Designer, because then it would be required for all work order types. And as we know, projects and PMs don't have failures, so they don't need failure codes. All right. I'm really sorry I couldn't do that demo. So I will entertain any questions that anybody has. And then I've got up here on this slide here all my contact information. And then if you want to check out HRSD in more detail, I've got some links to our pages. If you go to our YouTube page, I do believe we've got a video for our asset management program there as well. So yeah.
So you attended a workshop yesterday for the ISO 55000.
Yes.
Fantastic job. Do you guys make a lot of your decisions based off of having some type of framework in place? Do you guys have asset management frameworks in place?
Yeah, if I could pull up our SharePoint, which if I had my Surface Pro up here, I would have gladly pulled up our SharePoint site. We've got a site for our asset management program. All of our guiding documents are there. So we've got documents for condition assessment monitoring, risk-based guiding principles. The force main document that I referenced is there as well. So we've got our roadmap, our 5-year roadmap that we just completed. Let's see, I think it started in 2008. Could be wrong on the date. But we had a roadmap that started with our gap analysis first. And then we just implemented our next 5-year roadmap. So yeah, happy to share with you after the session. Oh no, tough question.
Jamie, your work order settlement, does it get consumed by your ERP for all the costs that come out of the work order settlement? Does it take more than record out to BI?
So how that works, good question. So really what's happening is costs are coming from EBS to EAM, and then they go to Power BI. So what happens is we get to use credit cards a lot. If the purchase is under $10,000, I can just swipe my credit card, go down to Home Depot, buy what I need to buy, right? So then I have to process a reconciliation of all my purchases. When I itemize, or each line item, I've got to put the work order number. So when I hit submit, costs come to EAM to that work order. Same thing on our requisitions. So we submit a requisition, ultimately becomes a PO. And same thing, got to put a work order number on that. Costs come back when we receive against a PO.
So ERP doesn't get financial data, it just goes directly to
Well, it starts in EBS, ERP first, and then it comes to EAM, the cost data.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? If anybody wants to see anything, I'm going to be here all week. Happy to pull up my environment, show you how any of these Flex or Extensible Frameworks work. I'm always happy to share. Feel free to shoot me an email. I've met with several customers over the years. We can always set up a Teams call. We are very happy at HRSD to provide any demos, answer any questions that anybody has. Yes?
Can you share more about how you activated off the line break type to make the checklist? Did you just add it so that the work order type for line break automatically creates the activity that then?
So really, the idea would be to fill out that standard work order field first. So when you go to the standard work order, so it's work order planning, assuming the menu structure is identical to mine, you're looking for standard work orders. So on that one, you can set up all the trades on the activity tab and the task plan. So when I was like, make it easy, guys. Just put in that standard work order field. It's going to populate on the work order screen a work order description, and then I put in parentheses what they're supposed to put, right? That's what I put on the standard work order, what I want them to put in that description on the work order. And it's going to populate any other fields that you identify on that standard work order. So it brings in, for the line break work orders, oh gosh, it brings in like 10 trades on the activity tab. And it brings in that task plan. And that task plan has that checklist. So as long as they put that standard work order, now if they forget, this is where that Flex is going to help us out. When they forget, they have to, it's two ways, right? So if they identify that work order as a line break and they don't put the standard work order, they're going to get an error message. If they put the standard work order and they don't put line break, they're going to get an error message. So it's forcing them to do one or the other, right? That's that QA/QC, right? So if they forget one, we're going to get it either way. So we're going to ultimately get that checklist.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was kind of thinking about, like we have a breakdown work order type that anytime any equipment breaks down, but then if we were to build like a universal checklist activity that gets generated based on that work order type.
Yeah. Definitely something we've learned over the years is if you don't make it required, you're not going to fill it out, right? And then we're going to be looking for the data, and we're going to be trying to remember off memory what transpired.
So
Yeah.
with your standard work order, you're going to go to the record view, you're going to click the lookup icon and search for that specific standard work order that applies to what's going on.
Yep. They just have to hit lookup, and all they got to do is type in the description, line break, and they're going to see 4 options. And then they're going to select the one that's applicable for their area. Any other questions?
The error messages are coming from.
You set it within the code. Like in the Flex Business or Flex Business rule, you can set what message will pop up for the user. Yep. Any other questions? All right. Well, I do have my computer, so if I do need to show anybody anything, if you have questions, let me know. Thanks, guys.